With this panel, I actually wanted to get a bit more tactical and talk around some of those early days, because all of you are in those early days and are making fantastic success. So before we get into some of the questions, and I want to certainly have plenty of time for the audience, could we just quickly do an intro? If you could each introduce yourself. Maybe we start with Tristram, of 45 seconds, your background as well as your company.
Great. So my name is Tristram Norman. My background is computer science, and my company is SimPrints. And we do mobile biometrics. So essentially what we look at is how can you take something complicated like biometrics, make it very simple, and allow it to be plugged into health applications and devices.
Okay. So my name's Toby. I'm the founder of Diagnostics, spin out from Imperial College London. My background's primarily in physics, but kind of accidentally ended up in medtech. Diagnostics is a medical design and engineering company that's commercializing handheld diagnostic systems for the hematology sector. It's quite a versatile platform that we have, but at the moment we are really applying it to anemia. So our first product, AnemiaStats, which is due to enter the market next year, is the first handheld system that's actually able to differentiate types of anemia, which for the 1.6 billion anemia sufferers globally is pretty important to be able to actually receive patient-tailored treatment actually in the point of care.
Great. Oliver Hardick. I'm a biochemical engineer by training. I was one of the fortunate ones, and I was able to commercialize or spin out from my PhD work, and I was really enabled to do that by a lot of help from a countless number of people, and also an awesome starting founding team. So as Andy mentioned briefly there, the amount of people that you are able to interact with really enables you to get your first steps on the ladder.
And all three of these teams have been part of OneStart. They're top 10 finalists, winner last year, and our inaugural winner in the UK. So our first question is, so when you're first just getting started, you could call your starting point at any point you want. It could be when you're first getting the idea or you're first trying to get your team together. But what were those early activities that you were doing to get your startup off the ground? Why don't we start with you, Toby?
I think right at the beginning, what we were really trying to do was actually just to get our IP protected. I mean, that's where I think where everything started, was actually making sure there was a credible new idea that could be protected and actually had real application. We'd already identified that was a huge market need from a cost perspective and also from an actual kind of clinical needs perspective for our technology. But we wanted to make sure that actually it was something that was very applicable. So we went to our technology transfer office. They said, no, we've got no interest. We went back again another month later. They said no. And we kept going until eventually we actually found what technology it was that we really wanted to take forward and why it was protected. I mean, we had to do our own homework for this. And you really have to actually understand your technology and the actual commercial application. And it was a good initial learning experience to actually understand how we were actually going to take this technology forward. And I think beyond the tech, the actual team, we actually used OneStart as the kind of catalyst to get the whole thing started. It was a very good timing that I just decided there was commercial potential for our technology. And so OneStart enabled me to actually kind of come to the first talk. And I just happened to sit down next to a designer who has now actually become a co-founder of the company. We just had a casual chat about my technology. It turns out she's one of the most talented designers that I've ever met. It was a really good synergy. So using things like this, where there's this fantastic opportunity to meet kind of leading experts in their field, and actually kind of combine your expertise to actually kind of grow the company and take it forward is really important. So I think, kind of team and technology were really kind of, I think, where it started.
Those are the two focus. What about you, Tristram?
So we started slightly differently. I think because we're more software focused, we didn't dive straight into IP. We kind of said, okay, we can push that issue off a little bit until a little bit later. What we did as a team is we sat down and we said, what are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? And then essentially, what are our breakpoints? When do we say, okay, we're going to get to here, and if it's not working, we're going to leave? Because everyone's kind of reaching the end of their PhD or their post-grad, and they're looking at job offers that are coming in, and you're assessing the risks, and you're saying, okay, do I want to take the plunge? Is this going to work? How's this going to turn out? So we really sort of sat down and said, what are we trying to do? And then where are our breakpoints going to be? And essentially, what do we want to look like in 5 years as a company? And we found that to be a really useful resource, because if you have a very clear goal and a set of values that you want to stick to, then you can find people to align with really quickly. And we found that to be very useful. We then reached out to a lot of people who had the same values, and it's been a great tool.
So I don't know. I think as was mentioned previously, it's about building a credible plan. So when you're starting out, you obviously think you have a brilliant idea, you have a piece of technology or whatever, and you can build a commercial plan around that and an exit, an end goal. You don't really have an idea of what it is, but your first sort of next steps are understanding that you have to take that technology or whatever it is to a point of commercial readiness. And to do that, you're obviously going to need a lot of money. So right at the beginning, you're thinking about how am I going to sustain this business? And to be able to do that, you need to start meeting people and really building up your contacts and your network and building the credibility in what you're doing. And without that, no one's going to believe you, no one's going to invest in you. So it's really about making the most of that early opportunity. You have much more time at that early stage in your business, and just use it to the maximum. And you'll meet a lot of great people, you'll meet a lot of not so great people, and you'll meet some people that will really put you off doing what you're doing. But you can ignore those ones and just stick with the great ones. So
That's actually a great seg to my next question. And so Andy brought it up again, and obviously John spoke about it quite eloquently yesterday around, beg, borrow, and steal when it comes to advice. And, a lot of us in this room are, very young entrepreneurs, actually by definition, at least under 36. And so we don't have 13 biotechs like Andy under our belt yet. And so when it comes to getting advice, what have you guys done? Because all of you have been able to build a great network, and obviously all of you have been particularly prodigious when it comes to what are some tactics you've done, and who have you reached out to, and how has it benefited you as a company?
I think this is obviously a fantastic starting platform. The amount of people that you get exposed to in the OneStart competition is unprecedented. You're not going to get that anywhere else. But it's really about making the most of it and sort of annoying the people that you need to annoy to get the advice that you need. But understanding that the people that you need to support your company are also going to change over the lifetime, especially at this early stage. The expertise and the advice that you need will rapidly change. But it's making sure that you make the most of those contacts and just always never turn down a meeting.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. And on top of everything that Ollie's been talking about, I think what we're also trying to do is we haven't shied away, because we've got a very short time to market. We've also, it's quite common in the software and medtech, don't be afraid to start going to look to the market already. The people, the real stakeholders that you want to be identifying, who are the gatekeepers to the market, and getting access to that and building your networks along that pathway so that you can get access to key personnel. So for example, on our advisory board out to the company, we just after lots of networking, just happened to find the world's leading expert in anemia, who's used by the WHO, all of the major programs, and we just made sure that we aligned ourselves with her goals. I mean, she's very driven towards creating sustainable impact and a very big social impact, and our company is trying to do that. We're looking at a global market, so we try to align ourselves with those important people who can really benefit the company and make sure that the advisors we get are actually important. I think that you go even further.
I completely agree with what these guys are saying. You just reach out to a lot of people and you look at your market, and you're gonna hear no a lot. That's just one of the things that you get used to. You knock on a lot of doors, and a lot of people close those doors immediately, and you just got to keep going. One of the people that is one of our funders is ARM, and they're in sort of 90% of all mobile phones over the world. And we just showed up one day and found someone in the office who was sort of aligned with trying to do something in ARM, which is what we were trying to do. And we came to them and we said, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is what we're trying to do. And he just said, that's great. Awesome. I'm going to put you in this year's budget and run with it and see how it goes. So, and then we just kept going from there. He then set us on another path to find people further down that line and in other regions, and said, just run with it. So,
no, I really liked it. A lot of one thing I try to tell people who are part of OneStart, a lot of you are still in academia. Some of you have left academia, but people like to help students, like to help postdocs, like to help ambitious people who want to do good work, right? And the worst, they could say is no, right? If you email somebody, maybe they'll ignore your email, or they'll just say no. There's worse things in life than somebody saying no, right? So you might as well send 10 emails, because one might be yes. And to be honest, your hit rate will probably be more than 1 in 10. If you email somebody to ask them for advice, you find people like to give advice. and you'll learn from them, and maybe they'll even give you money if it's ARM. So when it comes to those early stages, and you touched upon it a bit earlier, Toby, but it is a bit relevant, and I know John had touched upon it as well, when it comes to dealing with TTOs. So I think just you two have had to actually take your IP out of the university, and I think it's relevant for majority of the teams here. Could you tell us very briefly about that experience of taking your IP out? You could share as much as you like, you don't have to share what you're contractually obliged not to share.
So just like fundraising, it's a long process. You're convincing the owners of a piece of intellectual property that you're the right people to commercialize it. And quite naturally, as a current doctoral student or postdoc or master's student or whatever, they don't really believe you when you first come to them. So it's a long process of slowly convincing them. And again, this requires you having advocates to support you, people who have been there and done it before. Without them, they're always going to say no. So it's a long process, but it doesn't have to be a painful process. Sometimes it feels painful, but at the end of the day, it's justified. If you can't get the TTO to agree, you're never going to get investors to agree.
Yeah, from our side, I guess it's important to point out that, as we said yesterday, TTOs vary dramatically, I think, from institute to institute. With us, it was Imperial. They were very hard on us, but I think, as Ollie said, it was because we were very new to the idea. I mean, none of us had commercial expertise. We were very new to it. It actually wasn't until we won OneStart that I think things really took off, and all of a sudden they were quite keen to license that technology to us. Which, when we didn't say that in our final pitch, I think it was all fully secured we were going to get that IP. But it was it was a difficult process. They came to us with quite tough terms as well. I mean, unfortunately, with Imperial, they've got a link with the university. So Imperial Innovations is actually a separate entity to Imperial College. So they are held to account by the college. So there's a limited flexibility in that. It was all sorted in the end. I think Christmas Eve, I signed off the deal while sat in the car at home. But I have since had a slight problem, and I would advise, I think it was mentioned yesterday, get good advice from lawyers and especially tax experts as well. Because I have found that because of the fact that Imperial has a very set routine to spinning out companies, I've ended up, or I may end up paying a reasonable tax bill next year to basically ensure that I get the option scheme that I want to have in place for the company. And I've learned from that. It was a tough mistake, and if any of you are setting up, maybe just have a chat, especially from Imperial as well. There are maybe a few things that it's worth being aware of, but yeah.
You get free advice from Allsway, so at least several hours before they start putting on the clock to do that. Okay, so it's probably a good seg to my next question. That's, again, trying to stick to the theme of being quite tactical. Let's talk about your experience in securing your initial amount of capital, be it, I know some of it's venture funds, some of you have found some grants. I know some of you have been quite prodigious with grants. But so tell us a little bit about what you did, but not just what happened. What did you do to actually secure the funds? Can we start with you, Tristram?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things we did to secure the grants that we won and some of our funding is align with people in our field who we thought would be a good fit. So we're really focusing on the developing world before we focus on the developed world. And so we went out to BRAC in Bangladesh, who's the world's largest NGO per essentially people who work for them and the outreach that they have. And we said, look, you have an identity issue, and we're trying to create technology that will help you with that. And we had some contacts in BRAC, and they said, this is actually something that we would be very interested in doing. So then when we went out to the grants and we came and approached ARM, we said, look, we have BRAC, and they're interested, and they know that name, and they know the amount of people they have behind it, and they also know the financial power that's behind that as well. So that puts you in a very strong position when you go out there. And then from then, we just essentially targeted projects. So now we can say, look, the technology, we have help from ARM. And with BRAC, we have these specific projects with goals. So when we went out and we applied for Saving Lives at Birth, which is funded by USAID, UKAID, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we're able to say, you're targeting essentially expectant mothers, And BRAC has these 2 very large programs that also target expectant mothers, and we'll be able to essentially work with them and align on those goals. And that's a huge, huge help when you go to people. They take you a lot more seriously, and yeah, you can go a lot further with that.
So you got money from ARM and you got money from the Gates Foundation.
Yes.
Fantastic. Good job.
Well, yeah, for us, I think, yeah, the OneStart, we were right at the beginning, so it was kind of something that we entered to help grow the company and understand how we were actually going to set ourselves up commercially, structure ourselves for further funding. Post OneStart, we went for a TSB Smart Award. Before we did that, and over the duration of the OneStart competition, we had been growing our partners, like similar with SimPrints and BRAC. We were engaging with like One Family Health and also AMREF, which are 2 huge NGOs operating out in Africa. And we used that as kind of like leverage to demonstrate that kind of they were customers who were very keen to be working with us. They wanted to actually kind of, yeah, take our devices as soon as possible, get them out into the field to trial them, and will potentially be the end purchaser. So having them on board by the time we were writing like Smart Awards, saying that, look, kind of we're in a very good position here where there is demand which is very clear, and we've actually got the good team, we've already proven ourselves with the OneStart competition, kind of there is a clear demonstrable like kind of increase to the economy. I mean, it's like, certainly for the TSB awards, they want to see, or Innovate UK as they're now called, they want to see a good return to the UK economy in terms of what they're investing. So have a think about that kind of what value you are adding to the country through that. In addition to that, any of you remaining sort of in this like kind of quasi sort of academia industry relationship? I mean, if you want to keep going with that kind of your relationship with your university, I recommend for anyone starting on the medtech side or engineering related stuff, the Royal Academy of Engineering offer an enterprise fellowship, which essentially allows you to hold a fellowship at a university whilst running a company full time. I was very fortunate to have won one of these at the end of last year. So for the next year, I will still be holding a fellowship position at Imperial, which gives us access to all of their facilities, expertise, whilst being able to run the company.
And it pays a salary.
And it pays my salary as well, and more money to the company.
Good.
So I think that's a good point, and a lot of people will be at that sort of end of university phase, and jumping ship, leaving university limits you. There are certain funds which are only accessible to you while you're at university, and I was also on an enterprise fellowship. It's not just the Royal Academy of Engineering, there are a whole host of funders that will support you to sort of transfer your technology to a potential commercial entity, and the terms are really not onerous at all. So it's really about making the most of your sort of the free money that you can get hold of. Obviously, if you've been able to develop your technology to a further point before seeking investment, then you're going to get a better value or equity deal in that scenario. But then it's a timing issue. I think when we first met with our lead investors, it was very early on in 2013, and we didn't close until May 2014. So it is a long process, and you'll go out and you'll meet a lot of investors. We changed along the way, whether we were seeking angel money or VC money, and that's because you're developing your business. You're developing your business plan and understanding the market more as you talk to more people. So just obviously try and start these conversations as soon as you can, because they'll take a long time. But eventually, hopefully, you'll succeed.
And apply to everything. I mean, that's one we just got a lesson to as well. We went out for a Ford Mobility Challenge, and we thought, oh great, Ford Mobility, they're talking about mobile phones. And obviously they're talking about cars. And we didn't realize that until about 2 days before we submitted the grant, and we won the first prize plus the judge's prize. So we were looking at it saying, we're crazy, we're not going to apply to this grant. We said, just do it. And we got it. So really applied to everything. So things will give.
No, but so all 3 of you have secured non-diluted financing. But what's also interesting as well, so they push the tech and the business forward. So like, people talk about the TSB being free money, and largely it is. They don't take equity stakes, but it's not like they'll just throw money at anything, right? So you have to move the technology forward, and it'd be great if you could show some, commercial potential. The market is adopting this. We have some partners. We have letters of intent from, a potential customer. So don't ignore the commercial aspects of your startup. It sounds like neither of you have. You've pushed the business forward as well as the technology side of things forward. So next question, actually, maybe the last one before we open up to the audience. We spoke maybe 2 or 3 times around co-founders and building a team. John Beadle actually was great around that, and it came up again in the legal discussion. So when it comes to co-founder agreements and recruiting co-founders, could you tell a little bit about what have you looked for in your co-founders and in your early employees?
Well, I think if they're co-founders, then they have to have the same drive as you. You don't want someone that's not going to be as involved in the process or as committed to the process. So you really do need people who are of the same mind. You've got the same ideas of how you want the business to go forwards. But at the end of the day, if you can share your workload at that stage, you're going to have a better chance of succeeding. So I think it's vitally important, and it was for us. Our co-founder, Ewan, is in the audience, and I think hopefully he'll say the same. But it made our life much easier, having two of us really involved in the process. But then moving on from that, you obviously, as a small company, you don't have many resources, but building that small team is critically important, and finding the right people to support the gaps that you have is definitely the most important part of the thing that you can do at an early stage. And not doing it in haste. Obviously, you have to find people quickly. You don't want to be looking forever, but making sure you're hiring the right people is critical.
Yeah, diverse skill set. I mean, that's what I went for when I first started. I came from a scientific background. I've been engaged in limited business activities, very keen to find out about them, but at that time I had none of those the right expertise to take this company forward. So the two people who joined me to begin with, one was a product designer who had a physics background, so they understood the technology enough to know how to actually tailor it to human interaction with being a diagnostic handheld product. That's incredibly important for us. And then the second individual, Rob, he business development officer for the company. He had, I think, 8 years experience with GSK and Lilly in business partnerships and contracting and clinical trials. And before that, had been raising capital for startups from a tech transfer office. So it was kind of, a good kind of synergy between all of us. There was no major overlapping skills, and we were able to really kind of adapt to any change or any kind of unexpected hurdle that we came across. And again, with growing that team, we've now got 6 people. We're now trying to employ a 7th. So it's, we spend a lot of time with recruiting. And I think I was chatting to Dan yesterday about techniques to recruit people.
Actually, comparing notes.
Yeah, comparing notes over kind of how do you get the right person on board, whether it's kind of giving people homework from interviews to see if they're really willing to dedicate that little bit more to get this job, because you do need someone who goes further than just a 9 to 5, and who isn't going to kind of go look, this is too much work, I'm not coming in this weekend, because at this stage it's so crucial that you are all focused on the same goal and kind of achieving that initial success.
You want someone who really wants the position.
Yeah.
They're willing to work for it.
But again, at the same time, like Ollie said, you can't wait forever. So there is this trade-off of kind of, you do need to get things going as quickly as possible, but yeah, you definitely need the right team.
I think Andy made the point though earlier. You don't want to overwork your staff. So we hired a number of people who particularly chose the position in our company because they could go back to a 9 to 5 role, and that they brought other expertise and advances to our company that we wouldn't have otherwise had. So it doesn't having the right people doesn't, you don't necessarily need all of them to be working continuously for you.
I mean, people are what make or break a company, essentially. So the sad truth is that a great team is more important than a great technology, and you'll go further with them. So when you build that team, be picky, but make sure that your skills are varied, but you're also very aligned on what you want to do. And then your first couple hires, you need to make sure that they're aligned with the same thing, because a bad hire will set you back. And it's a scary concept. We had a meeting with Darren Disley from Horizon the other day, and he employs a lot of people, and he essentially said, we never have technology issues. We only ever have people issues. And it's very hard to find good people. So at a young stage, you're going to hire someone, and then they're not going to be the right fit, and you're going to look at what is the financial burden of now firing them, and it's going to scare the crap out of you, but you do it. You do it as soon as you can, and you get rid of them, because what the price will drag down the line will be a lot more than just getting it done now. So, you have to be decisive and be, proactive.
Ideally professional when you do it, and if you're professional, you find that there usually aren't legal issues, and the person probably realizes they weren't a good fit. But actually, it's a good seg. Have you not answer the question we don't want to, but have either of you had to have or part ways with either a co-founder or an early employee, and because I won't name names, we've had that already in OneStart for of the top 35, 2 or 3 instances, and so it's relevant and it happens. Have you had to deal with that, and how was your experience?
I think it's about ensuring that your starting position allows you to understand that people's ideas change. So what you all join in at the beginning with might not be how you're feeling 6 months down the line. And if you haven't put the right provisions in place in form of articles or shareholders agreement, then you might be in a tricky situation, and people might end up being less happy than they should be. So it's just about being prepared, and again, that's really about using the experience of the people around you to ensure that you know what you're doing there.
Yeah, I think that kind of set up the right option schemes, the right shareholder clawback schemes, because if those alignments do change, then you need to be protected as a company. Thankfully we've not actually had this issue. We've had one person come and go, but we knew they were going to do that. It was not an issue. There's not really much more I can really add to what Ollie said, I think, in terms of what we do. I think one thing actually, we did establish kind of those shareholders agreements and that kind of what the equity split would be fairly early on. I think maybe middle of OneStart, when we realised things were going quite well, we thought, well, just in case things really go that little bit further, we should probably just agree now what the split should be between us. And it has to be fair. Think about what you're actually bringing to it. Have a think about the future as well. Options, I think, tend not to come in to like pre-investment. Unfortunately for us, they have. So we've used them to our advantage. So it's allowed us to for new employees and current founders, they've got options as well, so they can work towards achieving milestones and getting in more of a share in the company, in addition to actual founding shares.
Oh, we pulled a classic. We incorporated too early and just split all the shares and said, we're all mates, it's going to be fine. And then, which everyone warned us not to do, and then we said, no, it won't happen to us. And it did. So someone left, and they said, I'm leaving, but I want to hold on to my shares. And we were saying, well, if you're leaving, we can't give those shares to someone else. You're going to stop us from growing. So we had to essentially shut it all down, start it all up again with, clawback schemes, with 1-year cliffs about when people start getting shares, how much work you have to do, these kinds of things. And it slows you down from focusing on your technology and what you're trying to achieve. And it's sort of these legal red tape that is important to get right, but you don't want to spend too much time on it, because there's experts out there. You want to go and get their advice, get it right off the bat, and then not focus on it essentially as you're trying to build your company.
But it could be uncomfortable. I mean, a lot of times they're your friends. I know you're quite good friends with your co-founders, and you want to be friends because you're spending a lot of hours together, and so you'd rather talk about other things, but these are important conversations to have early on, and to realize, the value is going to be created years down the line. So if a co-founder leaves even after a year, there's still, 7 years of work done. Do they still deserve that third of the company while you work for the next 7 years to make that third of a company actually worth something?